Hello everyone, we're joined by Steve Sadler today. He's the Associate for Technology Strategy with TSA. Steve helped launch the white paper at the International Technology Enabled Care Conference in 2017. Steve, could you give us a quick update on the main events, please?
Sure. It doesn't seem that long ago since ITEC 2017, but we're already talking around themes for the conference in October 2018. But the last few months have been really busy with lots of questions around, particularly around the nature of the changes to telecommunications infrastructure. This is where we're seeing the whole shift to digital, or more appropriately, internet protocol, packet switched infrastructure. So a lot of the questions and a lot of the working sessions that we've been involved in since are related to how does that impact on telecare in particular and its operation of those digital infrastructures. Hopefully by now most people know about the nature of this change, the fact that BT and Virgin Media and all the other providers are moving across to that digital or IP infrastructure.
And hopefully, as you say, everyone will be aware to some degree, but do you think those changes are actually understood?
So it's a good question. Some of the networks, communications networks, are themselves quite complex, so I wouldn't expect everyone to understand the details behind that. But the reality is they are going to have quite a marked change on the nature of telecare and how it works, and we need to be ahead of the game and plan for those changes.
Can you share a couple of examples of issues that and what they mean?
Sure. Well, let's take a couple of the commonly asked questions that have arisen in recent months. Perhaps the one that surprised most people has been the fact that as telecommunications providers move to IP, we're going to lose the familiar old-fashioned telephone line. So put yourself in the shoes of people like Ofcom and the communications providers themselves. They've got quite significant concerns. Take the making of a 999 emergency call. If in that new digital world, everything we connect as a phone device, as an old-fashioned telephone device, has to go via your internet router, probably connected by some digital adaptation device, then that means you're dependent on that router. If you lose power to the home, you lose power to the router, how do you make that 999 emergency call? Now, of course, in our world of technology-enabled care, we have a similar challenge with telecare alarms. These are smart technologies in their own right, but the backup power supply to those alarms doesn't support the phone line itself. So we need other solutions. We need to work with the providers and service providers to find a way around that problem, for example.
And surely technology-enabled care can't be the only industry that's affected by this?
No, absolutely not. If you go to these working sessions with Ofcom and the other providers, you'll see lots of people there from other industries. Basically any service provider industry that relies on a phone line, that particularly relies on exchanging data within the voice band, potentially they're affected by these changes. So you will see lots of people from security, fire alarms, fax machines, even bank terminals. A lot of these industries are affected, so it's good to see the right brains around the table working on the problems and hopefully the solutions. It's probably worth saying as well that there's another group of questions that have been coming our way over recent months, and you probably summarise those as communications issues or communication questions. For example, will my old analog telecare alarm work reliably with its analog protocol over an IP telecommunications network? Or even, what's the most appropriate IP protocol for my new digital telecare alarms over those networks? So we're getting lots of questions around how we grapple with those issues.
And you said earlier that communications is complex, so how can we be sure that the test facilities are representative of what we will see in practice?
So people like BT have been hugely helpful in this. They're working up quite a complex and representative environment for testing, and we are working closely with BT and others to understand that. The facilities we're hearing of are quite extensive, and they do appear to represent the particular failure modes and concerns that you hear raised at the Ofcom meetings. So what this means in practice is you will find during spring of 2018 that we will all have access to test facilities where different types of telecare alarms, older analog and new digital, will be able to connect to multiple types of ARCs or receiving centres. And most importantly, they will operate over connected networks from different communications providers, that's where we advise quite a few of the issues may arise. So in practice, we're going to get access to that sort of facility, and you'll even be able to change the performance characteristics of these test environments to stress the situation to prove just exactly when do alarms start to fail.
Well, that sounds really great, but can I ask, how will TSA members be able to access these test results?
So we'll be staying very close to the testing as it runs through this year. We'll be gathering, analysing that data, and the idea is to publish that through the TSA website. So I guess watch this space. We'll also try and make sure we've got some good, concise summaries ahead of the ITEC 2018 conference, so we can play back the situation as we now find it.
Great. And is there anything that service providers can be doing now?
Sure, absolutely. I guess the most important thing is for service providers to stay close to the technology supply sector. Obviously, what we all need to understand is how these potential new failure modes are being addressed within the systems that are being supplied. So how will the technology providers, how are they working around these issues, addressing them and bringing them to market? I guess the other issue is, you may have heard recently TSA working with BT to request that service providers share their telephone line numbers for the monitoring centres. So just to explain that point, BT systems are able to trace back. So if an end user asks to move to that new digital environment as part of their home infrastructure, BT will hopefully be able to alert to that fact and raise a warning with the service provider. That means the service provider should be able to consider the implications and whether there's any other actions that need to be taken. So I would certainly encourage people to engage. I mean, let's face it, if the testing doesn't go completely positively, then we'll probably need these actions to manage the situations as they arrive.
Great. And it's not just the UK that's affected, is it?
No, absolutely not. In fact, quite a few countries are moving ahead of us. And what we're doing at TSA is trying to network and work closely with some of those other nations. Take Sweden, for example. They're well advanced on their shift of alarm systems to IP, and we're engaging with those groups to understand the implications and get ahead of the game. Just to give you one example, in our discussions with Sweden, it's very evident that quite a few of the new systems themselves rely on, for example, cellular communications. Do you remember we talked about that power problem in the home around a router? Potentially you can bypass that by creating a diverse cellular communications path. So that means that we're gathering good quality guidelines on how do you build SIM-enabled cellular comms for alarm devices. So again, watch this space. We're trying to gather that guidance almost as we speak.
Great. And the white paper made a big play of balancing out the challenges with the opportunities that come with digital tech. Don't service providers need to explore these options too?
Well, absolutely. As you said, the white paper made quite a big play of how you might access smarter outcomes and richer data sets in that digital world as we move into digitally enabled, technology-enabled care. And hopefully we'll see lots in the press around how people are using everything from wearable devices, Internet of Things, particularly voice-enabled products in their home, right the way through to the back end. You know, how do you host these products in the cloud, apply smart data analytics, and even artificial intelligence. So there's an awful lot happening in that space, and I would encourage people to engage. You'll find links on TSA website and elsewhere to that commentary. So absolutely, we want to see that new technology and digitally enabled care featuring in the roadmaps. But perhaps just as importantly, we're very keen to gather evidence and good examples of the smart design work that happens behind the scenes. You think around information security as it relates to IP-enabled healthcare products, or even the smart system design where we're delivering diverse communication solutions, as we've just mentioned in our example. We're very keen to gather good examples of that work, and again probably highlight that at the ITEC 2018 conference.
So it seems like there's going to be quite a few changes on the way. What will this mean for regulation and standards?
Yeah. So for me, this is probably the toughest area of all. All of the work in digital products and healthcare is moving remarkably quickly. And of course, the standards process can often be quite a considered, consultative affair where you're dealing with a lot of stakeholders, so it can run slower. And this is probably our key challenge. If we pick a couple of examples, as we work through the preparation for the white paper, we got quite a few comments from stakeholders that take the big EN 50134 standard series, which is central to our social arms work. Some parts of that standard were criticised as being somewhat out of date and not necessarily representative of that shift to digital. Some parts are, they're already moving the game. So there's some work to do there, and TSA is working through the BSI committee groups and onwards to CENWEC to try and promote the development of those standards. Probably worth watching this space for the TSA Technical Advisory Group. That's been reinvigorated, and invitations are going out for working sessions from April onwards, where it's really important that suppliers of technology and service providers contribute to that debate around standards. Maybe one example I should give is of CEN as opposed to CENELEC. CEN Technical Committee 431 is working on quite a rapid development of a service standard for social arms that will be applied all across Europe. Work is well underway, and we're likely to see that actually quite quickly during 2018. TSA is also involved in the working groups there too, and of course we'll bring any information to TSA members as soon as we have it.
Great, well thanks for that, Steve. That's a really thorough update for everyone. Do you have any parting comments before we finish today?
Well, I guess the key thing for me is that this is happening. It is a change that's coming our way. The telecommunications infrastructures are going to move to IP, and we've got to grapple with that and deal with the consequences if they exist, and those potential complexities and new failing modes. So my recommendation is people stay close to the subject, consult with their suppliers, and make sure they're ahead of the game, not waiting to be caught by surprises.
Great stuff. Well, really appreciate your update today, Steve. And if anyone would like any further information on the digital shift of the white paper, please feel free to visit the TSA website. Thanks, Steve.